Okay, this is it's a very complex Gemara. We've been talking about bread in the sugya last week or two, and now we're going to try to define more a little bit about what actually is bread and the halachas of bread in the Gea to our sugya, of course, is amotzi, but we also have bread in regard to the mishnayos of challah. So mishnayos of challah. So we're going to see some of the comparisons between the mitzvah of challah. I see Bernie joined us also. Okay, good to see you, Bernie. Okay, and the mitzvah of challah and the din of making a motzi. So I want to talk about something which is on the airlines when they give the meals in the airlines, they give a little roll, and a lot of times there was a big tumult. They used to write on the roll they write it that it's a mazoinus because they don't want you to if it's a motzi, people have to get out of their seat, go wash. It's a big hassle on the airplane. It's not easy. The whole plane's going to have to get up and start washing, especially in an El Al flight where everybody's Jewish. So it'd be quite a tumult if it's going to be a motzi. So usually they wrote on the rolls it's a mazoinus, but there was a big tumult. Those rolls were mazoinus or not. Now we talk about that. We'll see in our sugya some of the possibilities and maybe probabilities. What are those rolls? Now, I came down on the El Al flight, and it's interesting because on the rolls they gave on the El Al flight, they did not say mazonos on them. There was it didn't say mazonos, and perhaps because they didn't, maybe they made it different than the rolls they make on the airplanes or the old planes, and didn't say mazonos, and also looked kind of different. Looked more like a roll that you make a motzi on. So actually, I was on a long flight. About the middle of the night, I was getting kind of hungry, and I said, "I think this is a motzi, and I'm going to get up and make a motzi." I got up and wash and make a motzi on those rolls. But the question is, what is actually, the criterion? What's a motzi and what's mazoinus? So that we'll see a little bit in the sugya, and it's like I say, it's very complex. And we're going to touch on some of the nakudas that maybe shed some light on it, but we're not going to know color 100%. But I think we'll get some idea what the complexity of this sugya about what exactly is what is mazoinus and what's considered to be a moitzi. Okay, so
Rabbi Friedman.
Yes,
Rabbi Friedman.
I'm listening.
My uncle, Rabbi Kalevsky, told me years ago. He said, in order for it to be a motzi, or mazonos, the dough or the roll has to be very, very sweet, so that you can tell the difference between a regular roll and a mazonos roll.
Yeah, that's a lot of people say like that. I hear what you're saying, Rabbi Kalevsky said, and we'll see that in the sugya. Okay, we'll see that. Like I said, it's one of the important points that we're going to see. But there's other nakudas also that are going to sort of we have to look at them also in the understanding which bracha we should make. So somebody else joined us. I'm not sure. Shemin 613. Who is that? I don't know. Who's Shemin 613? Who's that? Asked on mute. Okay. Who's that joined us? 7613. Asked on mute. I just unmuted you, but I may not answer me. Somebody else.
Shelly.
Who's that? Who's that?
Shelly.
Yeah. Okay.
Shelly Mendelsberg.
Shelly. Okay, I see you on Shelly. Okay, Shelly. Okay, I'm starting this year now. We're right, like I said, we're in Yerushalayim. I'm in Yerushalayim, and we're talking about the question about our roles. Are they mazoinus? Are they a motzi? And one of the criteria, like you mentioned, the Rabbi Weintraub from their uncle, that's if it's very noticeable. It's taste like mazoinus, but it's kind of a fine line when it's noticeable. We'll talk about that today also. So the Gemara we learned last time, we spoke about last week about we had was chavitza Chavitza was, according to Rashi, was bread which was boiled or something. Afterwards, boiled or fried. According to the Tosfos, it wasn't boiled. It was like torn apart, put together with other ingredients like eggs and maybe honey and other things, but it wasn't boiled bread. And then that was more discussed. What's the halacha of that chavitza? And then the Gemara brought in a case. They said that here we learned in the Bryce over here, Tanya lokach mikulan. So it took from all of them a kazayas, all of them. So Rashi learned, took from all the different types of menachas, kazayas. Tosfos learned the pshat was he took from all the different minim, the 5 species of grains, and altogether each roll had a little piece, and altogether he had a kazayas. So either from all the different menachas you put together, or all the different grains you put together, and altogether was a kazayas, little pieces. If those pieces were chometz, then you'd be chayav kores. But the kazayas v'matzu, Adam is it was a Pesach. We spoke about that last week. So the Gemara wanted to bring a proof that you don't need to have a kazayas be called a piece of bread, even if they're smaller pieces. They're very tiny. It says that they're all the pieces together accumulated make his kazayas. Then you make a motzi. So it doesn't have to be a bigger roll or a bigger piece of bread. If we call it a piece of bread, even if it's small pieces and they eat them all little pieces, it's considered like bread. You say matzah with it, it's lechem only, it's lechem. So the Gemara says, "Oh, my skin is shiur son." So the Gemara answers, "No, that's talking about when you put it back together. There was it was." Humpty Dumpty, broken, you can't put it back together. But the bread you can put together. So they're saying it's not like Humpty Dumpty. It says you can put them together. B'sharson, you rebaked it. You rebaked it. So that you rebaked it, so then it becomes a shiur of a kazayas. And so it wasn't that it was less. It was initially it was less than kazayas, but you put them back together. B'sharson. Gemara says, if that's the case. If we're talking about that you rebaked it, you put it back together. Amos Seifa, let's see the Seifa, the Brisa. Vusha Ochlan Bichtei Achilas Pras. So when you chayav kores, if you ate them with the shiur of Achilas Pras in a few moments, few minutes, or if it was matzah, if you ate it, you're yotze the mitzvah matzah. If you ate them all in the shiur of the pras, was a question. It was a couple of. Whether it's 2 minutes, 9 minutes of machlokas, how much is a shiur of this pras? So if you ate them all together in that shiur, then you're yotze the mitzvah matzah, then you're chayav kores if it's chometz. So the Gemara says ibisha arsan. If we're talking about you put all the pieces together and you rebaked it and you made a new roll out of it. Hi sha'achlan sha'achlo mibayalei. It shouldn't say sha'achlan. Sha'achlan is the lashon rabim. You ate them. You ate all the little pieces. Like you picked up this little piece and that little piece. That's achlan. But if you're saying that you rebaked it and you ate there came a roll, so it's not achlan. It should say sha'achlo. You ate that roll. So it's not nasher from the Gemara. Not nasher from the Gemara that he actually rebaked it, made one big roll out of it, because it says that he ate different pieces. And for the Gemara, well, talking about it was a big bread. It was a big bread. What does that mean? What does that mean? It came in from a big bread. So here, so okay, explains Rashi. Rashi explains over there in the Gemara. We're not talking about a case when he put it back together. It wasn't stuck back together, Udka Amret, like you said originally. So that which we said is considered to be bread. So you have a big, like a challah. You have a big bread. V'nishar min alechem, and you left over some of that bread. Shnol nifras kula. You didn't cut bread all of it down. You didn't make small pieces out of the whole bread. But you left part of the bread whole. I mean, nifras kula. If you would have broken the whole thing down, Then lo chashive petitin hapachusim begazayis. Then if those small little pieces, they're all crumbled down, it'll be less than a kazayis each piece. Then it wouldn't be anymore a bread. It wouldn't be considered bread. And you wouldn't be yotze matzah and pesach. In other words, you take the matzah, right? And you crumble it down to small pieces. That wouldn't be considered to be like a lechem. That wouldn't be lechem. And okay, so the Gemara's chiddush, very big chiddush. Learning this Gemara, this is starting to make the sugya a little bit, to me, complex. Is that if you have crumbs, but you have a challah, like say a Shabbos, you have a challah and you cut it down and just make small little pieces from the challah, and you look at the challah, so the challah is still whole, but the small pieces are less than a kazayas. So then the halacha is that you make a motzi on the small pieces. But why? I mean, well, it says because it's connected, so to say, to the big bread. So why is it connected? I mean, it's like you understand a person has yichus. You know who your father was, your grandfather. You know, you got yichus. You're related to you're related to your relatives. But what's the relationship between the bread and the crumbs? I mean, it came from there. It was his original background. He has a yichus. That those crumbs have a yichus. They come from a challah. So you see that it's like, when you eat something, that's what it looks like from the sugya, that when you eat something, you look at what am I eating? Well, I'm eating crumbs of a bread. So it's part of a bread. So that's what it seems like from the sugya. So it doesn't look, again, I would say it's not in the article itself. But what the mentality of a person, what he's eating, that's going to seem that the sugya, it seems like it's going to run through the sugya in that idea. Well, it really is not so much in the question about the actual the thing itself, but how do people look at what they're doing? I'm eating. Well, if I look at a bread and I see crumbs, I'm eating a bread. I just see crumbs, I'm eating crumbs. So that's what it seems like from this Gemara. We're going to talk more about that when we go through the different cases of the Gemara, and it's and we have to where that comes from, because the halacha of motzi really is the rabbanan dekadin. There's no din in Torah to make a motzi. The din you eat, but there's a halacha making benching when you would vet, so you eat a suda. But eat a suda, you have to bench here. But that's a vechalta v'savot, the barachos. So it's not then actually in bread either. It's just a halacha of filling yourself up. It could be, I don't know. I guess you ate, but you have to eat. I guess a motzi, but you have to eat. What's a shiur deraisa, but the rabbanan for sure. Motzi is rabbanan. So the getter of the rabbanan, and they made up this thing about make a bracha called motzi lechem and oretz. So they had criterion. So the criterion, according to this sugya, means how does a person look at what he's eating? If he looks at it as this crumbs, well, this if he breaks the whole thing down, he's eating crumbs. He's not eating bread. So it'd be a mezainis. If he ate it with a part of a bread, it seems like more wants to say that's a motzi. Okay, that's one seeming that chiddush and to me in the sugya. But let's see how the Gemara goes further. I'm going to go down the cases. It goes a bunch of cases over here, how the breads were made. So let's go down the page a little bit. Okay. Kiosa Ravin, further down the page. Kiosa Ravin Amar Yechanan. Okay. 1 second.
What down?
Lamed Zayin Amid Base.
Okay.
Lamed Zayin Amid Base. Okay. Somebody else just joined us. And I just saw someone else join us on our Zoom. I know there's a shiur also from Rabbi Schechter there in Chicago today. You see Rabbi Michelle also joined us from Florida. Okay, so we have Florida and Skokie, Chicago, and now, of course, Yerushalayim. Okay, now we're going to talk about a lot of different cases where things were prepared in a different way. And we'll see, now we're going to talk about challah. I'm going to see there's if you think of a challah, you think challah motzi, challah is a type of a bread, but the challah, it really is a whole masechta, and it's not really talking about bread necessarily, but talking about a dough that you make, water and flour, and perhaps other ingredients also, and that we'll see now in the sugya a little bit about that. So let's see, the Gemara talks about various cases of challah, then we'll see how the Gemara and the Rishonim want to connect these cases of challah to our shaila about what's considered to be a moitzi. Kiasa Robin Amar Rabbi Yechanan. So Robin, I guess he came to probably Bovel. He's quoting what he learned by Rabbi Yechanan Eretz Yisrael. Truknin Peturin Min Hachala. Truknin is Peturin Min Hachala. So what exactly is this Truknin that's Peturin Min Hachala? What is this case? Truknin Peturin Min Hachala means you don't take off Chala from Truknin. What is Truknin? So let's find that out. Does it say what Truknin is? Okay. No. Okay. The Gemara. It tells what Truknin is. 1 second. How the Rishonim learned this case over here. Truknim Turim and Achala. We have a 1 second. We have over here a okay. Case of Truknim. Turim and Achala. Okay. 1 second. One of them. Okay. 1 second. Okay, Truknim Turim and Achala. Ches. Okay. So they bring the Rosh and the Meiri, the Rambam. They say it's talking about you have a dough. Okay, Belila she'ofin oso agavi karka. It's the truknin along. Case of truknin. Truknin. It says truknin achala. Ches. Okay, here's truknin. Was chayim achala. Okay, now truknin achala. What exactly is the case here? It says, okay. So it says there was a little bit flour and a lot of water. So it didn't have it's not a regular dough. When you make a challah, so it becomes like a thick dough usually. This is a thin dough. It's more like a batter, more like a pancake dough. So that's what they say. Trufnin is like, okay. So we're saying right now that, again, Truknin Pturim and Achala. So, Truknin. First we say that Robin the Ikad, what did he say? Truknin, first he says, let's get the case straight here. Rabba, because there's an okay. Truknin Chayavim B'Chala. Because a Robin, Riyachan Truknin Pturim and Achala. My Truknin, okay, what's Truknin? So Machlokas here, whether this Truknin is Chayav and Chala or Potter Chala. First he says that Truknin Chayavim B'Chala. Then it says Robin, quoted Rabbi Yechanan, it's Potter B'Chala. My Truknin. Rabbiya, Kuba Da'ara. Kuba Da'ara. What's Kuba Da'ara mean? Ara, we don't understand. That means it's, in the ground. What's Kuba Da'ara? So Rashi explains, Osamokam Chalal B'Kira. So he makes a hole. A kira is it's an oven. So he makes a hole in the oven, chalal in the oven. Nosim b'tochol mayim v'kemach, moshosim v'ilfis. So ilfis is is a pot, like make soup. So here he has in his oven, he has it goes, I guess it's the open part of the oven. Then he pours in this mixture that is flour and water. It seems like it's like a batter, not like really a dough that we make for bread. It's more like a pancake batter. And it brings two opinions, whether you're chayav and challah or poter and challah. The question is, why would you say chayav and challah? Why say poter and challah? What makes this, what's the criterion? Why would two shitas say like that? So we have a machlokas, it seems like. First shita says that's chayav and challah. And then he quotes Robin is quotes Rabbi Yechanan, Turim and Achala. That he said it's Kuba Da'ara. Kuba Da'ara. Now what's the reason for this Kuba Da'ara case? That's the question. What's the reason that Kuba Da'ara is Chayav and Chala or Potem and Achala? Okay. So it says over here, Turim and Achala. Okay. That we understand the one that Turim and Achala because it's not a thick dough. So it says Chaim Chala. Why is that? Okay. Say why it's Chaim. Looking at that. Okay, it says Brachos Akira. Okay, also says Brachos Akira. Read Rashi. The Rosh and the Miri bring. Often also Al Gavi Karka. Shaf Al Gav. Shatruklan. Even though it's like we said, it's a thin batter, like a pancake batter. So it's even since you are like baking it, so then it becomes Chaim and Chala. Like, all right, so that is it turns into challah, even though it's a thin batter, but now it becomes like a thicker, but the fact that you're like, it's baking it. In fact, you put it in the oven and it turns out to be like it's like an oven. It's Akira, it's a stove, but it's like inside the ovens. I guess it's not like boiling in a pot of soup. So that he holds that this is considered like in an oven. And now you have to know there's a Mishnah in Chala, which is important to our sugya. And the Mishnah in Chala is going to be sort of a key to understanding what's going on in the sugya over here. The whole case about here's the Mishnah. I am quoting the Mishnah here. If you could, I'll make it larger. Okay, this is the Mishnah. I have it. We have it in English over here. The Mishnah talks about the process of something which is poter mechala or chay mechala. So it says over there, isa shetchilosa sufganin. So if a dough was sufganin, like we know, sufganiot. People in Israel, they eat instead of latkes, they eat sufganiot, like Bismarcks. They're soft and they're like a soft dough. They're boiled. Usually there's some dough and they're thrown into boiling shemen. So that's a sufganin. So he says shetchilas sufganin. If a dough was made as sufganin, at the beginning it was made like a thin batter, like pancake batter, not a thick dough. And then it was sofa sufganin, and it ended up also soft, like a sufganiyah. So then it would be mzoinus. Then it would not be chayav and challah, pturim and challah. Okay, so it doesn't have a din of bread, it doesn't have a din of challah, it's a butter. V'tchilasa isa v'sofa sufganin. And it says in the Mishnah, if it was initially a thick dough, made dough as the beginning was thick, and then it turned out at the end to be thin, sofa sufganin, the thick dough, not a thin batter, but it turns out to be soft at the end. You put into a boiling for oil or something like that, or tchilasa sufganin sofa isa, or the other case that it starts out to be sufganin and turns out to be isa. So then the halacha is that it would be in those cases that it would be chayim chala. So if it's only if it's beginning and end soft, it's thin batter, and ends up soft, then it's butter. But if it's beginning is thick and end is soft, or the beginning is soft and the end is thick, so so then it's chayim chala. That's chayim chala. So as long as there's some stage in the making of this batter that's thick, either at the beginning or the end, so that's a Mishnah in chala. Now learning that Mishnah in chala, well, we have to try to throw that into our sugya. That's a Mishnah. How does that work out in our Gemara right now? Well, that's a good question. Going back to our Truknin case. Well, we talked about Truknin, and we said Truknin was thrown into into the kira. All right, so it's thrown into the kira. Now, so what is thrown into the kira? Well, it's sort of like an oven, and now it becomes like baked. So it became like baked. So it seems like it's chilasa sufganin. It's like it's thin batter, and then it becomes thick. It's not. If you look at the Mishnah in challah, it seems like you'd be chayiv in challah. But here we're bringing a machlokas whether you're chayiv in challah or not chayiv in challah. On this case of truth, which seems to be that very case that it's starting out to be a thin batter, ending up to be maybe a real thicker batter because it's thrown into this part of the oven, which makes it into like a baked. It's called like baked. It's not like a pancake, which is being spread out, and there's not a soft pancake. It seems like it would turn into something more like a piece of bread or something like that. Okay, so we can understand the opinion that says chai mechala, But what about Reuven? Amar Yechanan Trukim Ptur min achala. So why is it potem min achala, right? So that I think in a question doesn't seem to fit with our Mishnah in challah. Okay, well that we'll have to see how it's going to work. Now, let's go to the next case over here. The next case the Gemara talks about is called Teresa. Okay, and that's the next case. Omer Abayit Teresa Ptura min achala. Now, what's Teresa? Teresa, what's Teresa? We know it's a strange words for us. What's Teresa? Teresa, my Teresa, Amre Gvil Mertach. Gvil Mertach. What's Gvil Mertach? Well, Mertach sounds like it's Roteach. Gvil Mertach. What's that? So it says Rashi. What's the case of what's the case of a Teresa? Zok Rashi Gvil Mertach. Nosi chemical mayim b'kli. So it's put into like some type of a container. You put the water and flour in a container, ubochashim b'kaf, and you stir it. Stirring, it sounds like you're stirring. You don't stir dough. You stir a batter. Stir it. V'shochan l'kira k'shini seconds. Well, this sounds exactly like a pancake because it's something that you stir. You stir a batter. When you make a pancake. So that. Then you throw it onto a kira. It's like like a hot stove. You got like a flat. Let's say what do you call hot plate. So that sounds exactly like a pancake. And then we understand it's not. That's like tilasa sufganin v'sofa sufganin. That makes sense, right? So that we just said in the case of a Teresa. What do we call it? We said it was kibir mertach. So it was basically it sounded like a pancake. Okay, Teresa b'tur menachala. So if it's a gvil mertach as a pancake, it's good, all right? Or a pancake case. Now in the case, then the Gemara goes, I know some talk about pancakes, and maybe someone to say that's impossible, but Kistan pancakes, well, maybe we'll get to that. I don't know. I'm not sure in the yeshiva. There's be a tumult about that also. So Vika Damri Nama the Hindiki. So Nama the Hindiki, it's a Nama sounds like bread. Nama the Hindiki is that what kind of bread is that? Nama the Hindiki. Says in Rashi and that Nama the Hindiki. Says Rashi, but sake is already that's dough. That's dough. That's not talking about batter. It's not talking about but sake is dough. But Rashi says she'ofen b'shput. You bake it on a shput is a spit. Like you usually take a steak and they would put it onto the flame. But here you took this dough, it was on a spit. Umoshkin also tomid b'shemen or b'mei beitzim b'shemen. So you smear it the whole time with oil or with eggs or oil in oil. So this sounds like we talked about before, Rabbi Weintraub. Having the taste of of not having taste of bread, because you hear this is something which is made with a lot of different ingredients. It has on a flame, so it's sort of like an oven, but it's on a spit. It's like a steak, which is going on the rotisserie, going on. So that's what, according to this interpretation, this case that we're talking about, that this Nam the Hindiki. So the first shot in the Teresa was pancake. Okay, it's bought there because it's Bil Mertach. But some say it's not a pancake, but it's actually a real dough. But the reason it seems that we bought there from the challah is because it has these other ingredients that are being smeared onto it. So it's not like it's not like a sufganin, which is it's got soft soft dough. It's a thick dough, but in the thick dough you have also a lot of other ingredients. So the other ingredients are somehow taking it away from being a challah and becomes more like let's say maybe a sweet roll, something like that. So that's like, again, we're talking about challah here. We'll see how this all, sort of is going to come into our, halachas of zaynis or amotzi, because we're going to try to see if you can compare the halachas of challah to halachas of the rabbanan made up in amotzi. Some say you compare, some say you don't compare. So, but that basically we have two definitions of the trisa why it's potter from challah. Either one is it's like really tilasa sofa sufkedin, so that's like the Mishnah in challah, and that's what's potter from challah, or it's like again a real dough, but has a lot of other ingredients that take it away, make it more like a sweet roll. Now we have another case. Okay, so we have so far two. The truktin, which we had machlokus, whether it's chayiv or potter. We aren't sure really why it should be potter. Then we have the second case, the trisa, which has two definitions, either a pancake or a sweet roll. Then we have a third case that the Gemara mentions now. That third case, the Gemara is talking about is what is vikad amre lechem asa lekutach. Excuse me. That's a vikad amre. It's a third shot in trisa again. Third shot in trisa. It says lechem asa lekutach. Lechem asa lekutach. Now, what does that mean? It says v'tani rebchia lechem asa lekutach potem menachala. Okay, so what is this lechem asa lekutach? Now, kutach we know is really some kind of a milcha kaddish. It's something like sort of like it's got a lot of ingredients in it. We have that word kutach and psachim, the Mishnah in the third parak about kutach, some kind of a milcha kaddish. Okay, so what exactly is lechem asa lekutach? See, Rashi says, "Ein ofen asa b'tanur ela b'chama." So it's a new thing where it's been baked. Rashi says you bake it outside in the sun. Okay, bake it in the sun. So you have to have I guess it has to be kind of warm. I guess a warm climate and a lot of sun. I guess maybe in Florida or something like that. You have something that you can bake a something out in the sun. But so this is something which is lechem asa lekutach. So that's how they used to make this type of a thing for which was eaten for kutach. Kutach was some type of milk. More, let's say it's like let's call it cream cheese, something like that, or soft cream cheese, something like So it's you're eating the bread. The bread is going to have a smear on it, so it's more like you're going to have like a lot of it's going to be like sort of like a cracker maybe that you have. You want to smear the cream on it. So it's not so much for the bread itself, but for the kutach. You want to eat the kutach, the way of it. So like when you take, let's say the herring, you want to take the the tom-toms, to eat the herring. So here, but Rashi explained, Rashi says it was made in the sun. So what if it's made in the sun? So somehow it's not made in an oven. It's made in a bechama, okay? So what does that mean? So what if it's made in bechama? So what does that change it somehow? Maybe it's not baked in the normal way, but so what? So that's also a comma. Let's see. So what is that? Why does that change it and make it into not challah? Okay, so that's what he says. Okay, one second. Okay. Okay. And he says over there. It says you pass it more precious for cholov. Okay, they used to like dip it in this whatever this type of milk dish over there. So it's made in the sun. So the fact it's made in the sun, okay, so I have an anakud on this. So what if it's made in the sun? Well, what's that got to do with anything? Why should that change? I want to show there's let's take a look over here. We have from the Meforshim on this case, Lechem asa lekutach. Let's go down over here. We can see it down here. This is from the Mesifta. Okay. In Mem Zion. You can see it? I'm going to make it larger if we can. Let's make it larger. Why is this case? All right. Okay, we see down here. That's the case of this. It's made for kutach. Okay, this is lechem asa lekutach. Rashi the Rameska lechem. Talmid Rabbeinu Yoina, shekol davar shenefe b'chama, ein dinoi kepas. He says if it's baked in the sun, so that's not how bread was made. I guess for some reason it doesn't come out the same way. Baking it in the sun, it won't come out like it does in an oven. I guess oven fire is much hotter, and it makes it forms it different. And just sit in the sun, it's going to come out a different complexion or whatever, or different calling it the makeup of the material. So he says in that case, it's not going to be chai v'chala. According to that's what he's learning. Rabbeinu Yoina, that's what Rashi said. This is made in the sun. Made in the sun, so I guess it doesn't come out like regular bread. Because what tastes is that's Rashi, shafisa gemura, amivesh v'chama. So even if you had regular dough that you make for a bread, and you didn't put it in the oven, you put it into the you put it in the sun. So he says even if you have a regular dough stuck out in the sun, but the nechala. That's how he brings the pshat in Rashi. Okay, that's Tosha says, and that's Rashi. Because of Rash is in chala. Shaf mitchila hoisa isa regila, even though it was regular dough, mikol makom kimat shoya b'daito liyavsha b'chama. Since it had in mind to put it in the chama, lo lafosa b'taner, Petura Michala. Now that's interesting. I'm going to see this Rash. I didn't see the Rash inside. Today I was in a kollel. My brother has a kollel in Yerushalayim, and one of the people in his kollel is a Talmud Chacham. Has a lot of Talmid Chachamim there. One fellow told me he's learning my brother's kollel for 40 years. 40 years the guy's learning the kollel. The other guy hasn't been there that long. He's only been like 35 years. This guy was talking to me. So he said he has a piece of Torah written on the Rash in Chala, but we didn't locate the book yet that he has it written over there. Maybe he'll give it to me. He said he has it over there in the kollel somewhere about this Rash. The Rash is one of the main Rishonim on the Yerushalmi. Explains the halachas of the explains the halachas of the Yerushalmi. So anyway, I didn't. This fellow told me he has an interpretation on this Rash, which maybe we'll understand it if I'd see that guy what he wrote there. But so what is he saying though? And he brings that Rash. So it's das. Who cares what his das was? I mean, it sounds like because he had in mind to put in the chama. I mean, it's just. I thought because it ends up in the chama, it means that it's not going to be baked like a bread in the oven. But he says his das was to make it in the chama lo lafosa b'taner tura michala. So it sounds like it's okay. I see Bernie is giving us, I guess, examples of something, and I know it's maybe that's Teresa in this picture. I'm not sure what Bernie's showing us different types of things over there. Sometimes he shows us Einstein and other things over there, but not showing us that picture Bernie is showing. So it says his mind was to make this having it in mind. So what does that have to do with it? So it seems like again that this question of challah we had before also, like bo milechem gadol, that was motzi. We said a person looks at it. Here, a person looks at this thing. He knows he's going to make it, put it in the sun, so he doesn't think about making it for bread. He wants to somehow. Yeah, it's a delicacy or some kind of a snack or some kind of a, eating it with kutach. Now he said, "Diksha Taisvis, Kishmichila Isa Gamura." So the Taisvis disagrees with this interpretation of Raj. He says, "Well, since we're talking about something which was regular dough, we're not talking about batter like we make a pancake. This is regular dough." And now you put it in the sun. So Tosha says, so what if you put it in the sun? It was Isa Gemura. So we had the Mishnah, don't forget, we had a Mishnah in Chala, which you just learned earlier today, that if it's Tchilasa Isa V'sofa Sufkanin, or Tchilasa Sufkanin Osa Isa, as long as one stage, the beginning stage, or the latter stage, was made with thick dough or thick, so it came out thick, it's Shechai B'chala. So who cares if you put it in the sun? But it was originally thick. So why should that make it Potter B'chala? So they says that if that's the case, you should be Chaim B'chala since it started out to be regular dough. So that he doesn't agree with Rashi's interpretation. Okay, so you have to say that Lechem Asal Kutach, according to Tosfos, he explains the Marshal says this, was really a thin batter. It was a thin batter. Okay, it wasn't like Rashi learned a thick batter thrown in the sun, but it was something with a thin batter, like a pancake batter. That's why it's Chaim B'chala. Moshe Kosova told me to be okay, he said Shem Ben Yankiv, the Meiri. It's a different interpretation of what exactly was going on here with this case of this Kutach case, Lechem Asal Kutach. So what was it because so putting in the sun, according to Rabbi Yaina, or according to the Rash, it means he had in mind to put it in the sun. So there's some reason put there in Chala. Here brings on here, Rabbi Yaina, Pirusha Hasheni, Pirshu. Rabbi Yaina, of course, one of the main enforcement of brachos. So he says, Potter Michala, Kivichin Osui, Kidei Lecho, so Kikra Michael. So you're not gonna, in those days, don't forget the main, the thing that filled people up was bread. That was the main part of the meal, bread. But this made in this kind of fashion wasn't made to be the main Ikr Michael. Like we said before, it was like eating the herring. You don't really want to eat the tom-tom. Just a way that it's easier to eat the herring with the tom-tom. So also eating the kutach, you needed to eat the kutach, so it was more, I guess, tasty if you added this little cracker or whatever with the kutach. So that's what he learned. So it's poter chala. So it was made in a way. So it's made in a way that people are not going to use it as bread. Oh, so that seems to be. Again, so we had the way looking at the sugya, so we see that how do people look at things? We had it as far as motzi, now we're talking about as far as challah is concerned. We said even crumbs, because menachem gadol, a person looks at it as bread. Then we had something that, we said that, that you put regular thick dough, but it had a lot of other ingredients on it, so that was potem nachala because it was maybe people don't look at it as bread because look at it as sweet roll. Now we have also, according to Rabbi Yaina here, the reason that this lechem asal kutach is poter from chala is again because people don't look at it as something that as like the main like the main part of the meal. Fill yourself up with bread. That's what they used to do in those days. They didn't have so much food like we have today. So this was more like helped you eat the other parts of the meal. That's why I said poter nachala. So we have now, that's the sugya we're learning. They're trying to figure out, what is exactly all these different cases that are the different variations of something which is poter nachala, and how it's going to boil down to our case of amotzi over here. That's going to be the next question of the Rishonim, how to put this together. Okay. Okay, that was what we mentioned about then the Gemara asked the stira in the case that we just mentioned about the Asa Kutach. So the Gemara, so we just learned that we said that the case of Asa Kutach is poter menachala. So we brought Rashi said because it's was baked in the sun, and then we brought a Rash that says your das was to make it in the sun. And we had now Rabbi Yonah that said that the reason that's poter menachala is because actually was made not to be eaten as the main part of the meal, just as an accompaniment to what do you call it, the yogurt or whatever or cream cheese. So that's why it's poter menachala. The fact the Gemara about Tanya, what we learned in a brisa, so Gemara, we have a brisa. But Tanya, that chaya b'chala. It says, no, 1 second. Lechem asal kutach, and the brisa says that it's actually chaya b'chala. All these interpretations are very nice, but a brisa says that it's chayv and challah. Pasuk kitoni taima reviewed Omer maaseh mochich.
Hi there.
Okay, we have maaseh mochichin aleh osin ka'ovin chayovin kilimudim peturim. So this is giving us another definition of what would be chayv and challah or potim and challah. So it says it depends how the thing comes out, or the thing how you form these lechem also lekutach. What kind of form do they have? Let's see what that means. Let's see how Rashi explains that. Rashi says if they're made ka'ovin, chayv mechala, if kilimudim is potter. Rashi explains they're made ka'ovin, aruchin umukutefes kegluskois nos. So Rashi says that they're made in a nice form. You know, like I know here in Yerushalayim, we have a lot of different challahs. I go Erev Shabbos. They have many different types of challah. And in Chicago, I don't know if they have that many types of challah. Over here, you buy for Shabbos, they have all kinds of this kind of challah, that kind of challah, all different shapes. So here he's saying that this is made in a nice shape. The mukutefes gluskos knows. A gluskos is like a nice cake, like a birthday cake, you know. It's made in a very beautiful way. But that the lechem was, he made it real, like, you know, especially I guess in those times they make bread in a very special way. So if you form this this lechem was lekutach, so it's right in the form. So how do people look at it? Again, looking at how you look at it. So if you made the lechem was lekutach, so it seems like it doesn't make a difference, you know, what it ends up in the sun, or it's you know, your das to make it in the sun, or what was the other tour we said that lechem also kutach because you want to make it only for the what do you call it, for the eating it with the cheese. Well, this could fit in according to that last shot we just said. Is if you showed you make a really beautiful form of it. In other words, if it's just a tom-tom that you put on the herring on there, so it's not like something special. You don't look at that cracker as something in a chefsam neatzma. It's chivas in itself. But if you made it in a very beautiful form, it shows that you want to make this into choshev thing. And then you make it into challah. I have to make the noise a little bit in the background. I have to cut it down for a second because we have a trey koli l'mishtame, so we have a little bit of noise in the background. So let's get it out for a second. Okay. So over here it says, again, in this case, that if it's made in a form, like a beautiful form, then Rashi says, then you'd be chayiv in the challah. Okay, if it's made ke'oven. Kilemudim, kinesarim ba'alma. Neser is like boards, like you know, you're building you have flat boards that have no shape. Neser is like a board, just a plain straight board. So like a 2x4. So Neser Alma Shalo Hikpid al Risosam. He wasn't makpid on the way they looked, the shape, the way he formed it. Dugmaso Shanina White Cotton. He says also lo nemudim luchin labor shayayin chasoiso. Just like I guess they covered up a thing where you had like a pit where you had wine in there. You had some boards to cover up the pit that nothing should fall in, I guess. So just a cover with straight pits. So the question is, how did you form this dough? So it's not a question of ingredients, but it's a question of when a person made it, what was he trying to do with it? Was he trying to make it so even the same ingredients, but what form does it have? Interesting. So they can have the same like roll, but the same ingredients. But if you made it like this, it's not like made in a choshev way. It's not formed in a choshev way. So that's mezainis. Or I'm sorry, then it's not chai mechala. We're not talking about yet about mazonas or motzi. That can get into the rishonim, but it's not chai mechala because it's not considered to be challah. It's not challah because it's not kosher. So today's sugya, basically, I'm going to try to interpret this sugya and bring it into our sugyas of motzi. Is it got to do with either what's some of the ingredients or what your das is, or the form of the object, and all these things could change the halacha, or even where it's made. Also, if it's made in an oven, it could be that, according to Rashi, maybe the form comes out a little bit different. And again, the form might be different when it's in the sun than a regular cake. So we have to know the halachas of challah, and we have again in the challah we have the Mishnah, which is tchilasa sufkin and sofa sufkin is the only way you're potter. But if it's any stage of the way, it's going to be the thick dough, so then it's going to be chayim and challah. So those are the ways that we're dealing with in our sugya, and how that's going to break down to our motzi. That's going to be coming up here in our the Rishonim right now, and that's if it's compared, it's not compared, and I think we'll maybe leave that for this week. We'll talk about that, and I want to everybody should have a fantastic week, and we get things started in the sugya, and everybody I saw today joined us, as I saw.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Dr. Zatz, I see you joined us also now.
Yep.
Okay, and if anybody wants, also I have a recording of this day's shiur also, and we're gonna talk about this Mr. Shem tomorrow. More, we're gonna talk about how this sugya connects to Amotzi. So far today we spoke about all the halachas of challah, but is it connected? Well, some are going to connect it, and some will say it's not connected. Why is it not connected? We'll see that. Tosa is going to make a very interesting distinction between the halachas of what's called taking off challah and what's the halachas of amotzi. Okay, that we'll talk about in the Tosos coming up sugya. And there's another thing we'll see. I just want to look at it for a second. In a sefer, I told you there's a sefer about brachos. It's important that maybe if the olim would buy the sefer and brachos. I talked about the sefer from Rabbi Tversky and Rabbi Forrest, but in Israel I also have a sefer from Rabbi Badner. So Rabbi Badner's sefer on brachos. It's a very large, important sefer because he quotes a lot from Rabbi Feinstein. Rabbi Badner's sefer. A second, I'll show you some of the points that he talks about. We talk about in this case of Amotzi. One second. It says over here. Okay, this is going to be the tomorrow's sugya. Okay, this is a statement from Rabbi Badner. Just want to make a little bit. I have to make the audio a little quieter in the background again. Mute all. Okay. So he talks about the different products here that don't have halacha of a motzi, and he's going to give us a whole slew of products, but he gives us a rule here. He says, here's the rule he wants to say. The sefer from Rabbi Badner. So you get over here. Here he says, most baked products made from grain flour, including bread, cake, crackers, and like, are classified as the bread family. Okay, bread family. Chazal, however, designated that amotzi is made only on products which people generally use as the mainstay of their meal, rather than as a in-between meal filler or snack. Only such products are considered genuine bread. Now, this is going to be very, very important halacha, and the question is, where is he getting this from, and how is this going to come through in the halacha? So, again, there's something we spoke about is, if it's very like something very sweet, so that's usually not used as bread. So that's like a cake. That's more like you take the cake with coffee. So there's also those rolls which are very sweet, which Rabbi Weintraub said he heard from his uncle, from Rabbi Kalevsky, that they're very sweet. You can taste it, so that's like something you take with the coffee. So here he's saying that what's the definition of bread? What people, genuine bread is when people, what they consider use as a mainstay, what usually how it's done, and not just a meal fill. So we have to think about each thing, like those things, like in the airport. What are those things? What are they? Okay, so then we'll talk about that more. And where did we get that from? He's quoting this. He's saying this as a mocker from a Rambam, from Beis Yosef, quoting a Rambam. Now I want to learn that inside that Rambam and learn the Beis Yosef on that. That's very, very important halacha that he's saying that how is it made, or how do people look at it? Because again, I remember this was a whole shot by pizza. When I was younger, they used to say pizza one slice is mazeines, two it's a motzi. Well, we'll talk about that. Is that true? And some people say today everything is a motzi in pizza. I think that sounds like more the way we're learning the sugya. That would probably be true the case, but we just let's learn this tomorrow. It's important safer. I think if people would buy the safer Rabbi Badner, something about called the Hilchos Brachos. Here I think I showed it to you, or the other safer from Forrest Mary Tversky. We're going to touch on a lot of these halachas in the next couple of here. You see it here. Okay. This is the safer. See it in this thing here. Okay. Hilchos Brachos from Rabbi Pinchas Badner. Okay, so I'm sure they have it in the bookstore. Somebody bought it for me right now in Yerushalayim. And okay, that's important safer. And I think it would help us when we go through these sugyas about all the hilchos brachas. But it is, again, one of the most complex sugyas that I know in Ketz Mevorchim is the bracha of bezoinus and amotzi, and it's very, very complex. And so we're just today we're touching on it, and we learned a little bit the Mishnah in Chala, and a little bit in the Gemara with the cases of Truknin and Teresa, okay, and Lechem Asa Kutach. Those are, I think we had in Teresa several interpretations, and one of them was Lechem Asa Kutach, and then the Nam the Hindiki or Gevil Murtach, that very these different cases, which each one has got a little bit different, and the Rishonim are learning a little different, but we studying the cases, as you see, it's very complex. So today we touched on first base, but we have to go around the bases to figure out the sugya. And I want to wish everybody a fantastic day. And so far, I was a little bit jet lagged, but by the end of this year, I was getting better. I think a little less jet lagged by the end of this year. But I hope, I don't know if I sounded it, but I felt like I was getting a little bit less jet lagged. And I hope that by tomorrow I'll be much less jet lagged.
You have an
Okay.
amazing amount of energy. That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
You're amazing.
Well,
Baruch Hashem.
I did not sleep last night, and both my wife and myself were kind of, we're I don't know what is this, our time zones that are messed up, or we couldn't sleep last night. So today I went to learn by my brother's koila. I figured I'd go see him a little bit, but it was my brother says you look tired. I says, well, I am tired. That's true.
Take
You
care of
guys
that
are
cough.
partying hard through Jerusalem.
Yeah. Okay.
You should take care of that cough.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm trying. I'll try to take it easy. I'll try to take it easy. I mean, and it's getting better. I'm getting better. I mean, like I say, me and my wife both were pretty bad last week, but each day a little bit better, and hopefully, as the days go on, it's very warm here. By the way, also very warm, and I know it's so I don't know if that's good or bad, but there was a Chamsin. They said it was one of the hottest days here in a long time here,
Oh, wow.
Okay. All right. Hopefully that,
Good.
all right, everybody have a wonderful day.
You too.
Have a
Okay,
great
Rosh
day, Hannah.
Hashanah.
Great to
Thank
see
you.
you. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Be well, everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right. I'll try to rest up a little bit. Okay.
Good, good.